Welcome to another G News update. Well, Simeon Brown is in hot water because it's now been 13 days since he first knew about a data breach in Manage My Health, which basically looks after all of Northland's health records, and there's 39.9% Maori population up there. So Simeon Brown has actually made very little progress in actually communicating with people that may be affected, because today, 13 days later, after Simeon Brown knew about all this, there's still 60,000 out of 100,000 people who have not been communicated with via Simeon Brown as the Minister of Health, who is ultimately accountable for these situations to be managed. But wait, there's more. This afternoon, Radio New Zealand revealed that Canopy Health, a leading provider of breast cancer diagnosis and treatment, had a major cyber attack back on the 18th of July, and it has taken over 6 months for some people to be notified that their data has been taken or may have been taken. Further to this, the kind of data that has been taken was on some administration server and included things like personal bank accounts that had been used to make payments, etc. Now, the Minister of Health, he had said nothing about this. He had done no review of the contracts of his providers, but clearly he must have known about this back in July and hasn't done anything about the response at all. Well, either that, or he absolutely was just walking around hospitals, taking photo opportunities, blaming the unions, blaming nurses and doctors, blaming everybody else but himself, and not paying attention to the security contracts, while the current government was looking at trying to get rid of IT altogether out of Health New Zealand, instead of looking at security for you and me, the public, people who have got confidential and sensitive information in the system. So this is two strikes now about not managing the system. Simeon Brown clearly must be sacked. He's got to go. So what is Simeon Brown doing about this? What's he up to? Has he managed to do something here? Has he responded? Let's take a look. Simeon Brown has been occupying himself with other things, like the strawberries in his garden, or the fury that he feels at unions for actually demanding some kind of action be taken by politicians to properly fund our emergency and fire services when they're underfunded and the equipment doesn't work. Well, there's no talking to Simeon Brown. He's just going to attack and blame everybody else. But it's time he was gone, because accountability can't just go up into nothing. There needs to be some kind of accountability from the minister here. And New Zealanders are all in agreement that Simeon Brown has really let down everybody now, and we need a change of government or a new Minister of Health. Pick one. But I think we really need a change of government. In other news, we've actually got a lot of speculation going on about Trump and what he's going to do, whether he's going to strike Iran right now and take some kind of military action. There's a lot of rhetoric going on. As you are aware, there's been 2 weeks of protests going on within Iran, mainly because the Iranian currency has devalued severely, which has meant that inflation in December in Iran was around about 52.2%, and that's a lot higher than it's ever been around New Zealand. You know, we complain about 7%. But 52%, and the price of imported goods have actually skyrocketed, making everything like the essentials pretty unaffordable for the people of Iran. And so there's been demonstrations and civil unrest. But markedly, the main thing to look out for here is the fact that the internal security forces within Iran are united with the government in there at the moment. And there seems to be no kind of sign that they're going to break down. Instead, there's probably more likely to be some kind of crackdown that happens. The protests that have been happening at night, which is quite different from protests in the past, and the media and internet has been shut down in Iran, probably in order to limit the proliferation of images of cars being burnt, of fire stations being burnt, of buildings being burnt, and there's been some mass arrests of something like 2,500 people who have been accused of siding with Trump and America, and the official posture is basically that Iran will actually strike Israel if America strikes Iran. So there's some pausing at the moment, but Trump may strike again like he did back in June, July of 2025. If that does happen, that's very serious for New Zealand's economy, because 20% of the whole world's oil passes through the Strait of HUMARS, and that carries on and goes to places like Singapore, Japan, and South Korea, which is where all of New Zealand's fuel is refined and then imported into New Zealand. So that will have an effect on the New Zealand economy if, say, oil prices were to go up to something like $3 a litre. That's the kind of thing that has been talked about last year when there's instability and uncertainty around this region. If there's kind of problems that escalate and broaden into a military conflict and that strait is actually closed down, we're in for big economic uncertainty again, and everything that Treasury tells you, everything that Nicola Willis tries to tell you about how we've turned the corner, goes out the window and is all a load of bunk yet again. Because, you know, just saying, hey, look, one quarter GDP's result means that forever after everything's great, that's just rubbish. And anyone that actually votes for National based on that has got to get their head read. So Trump's at the moment pausing on taking military action because he's heard that if he was to do this, it could actually lend more of a galvanizing support from the public to the Iranian government at the moment and make everyone come together in a united way against the common enemy, which is the United States and Israel. In other news, we've actually also got a situation where our leader, or so-called leader, Mr. Luxon, is actually nowhere to be seen through all of this. He's not speaking out on anything to do with the international rules-based order, and he's still actually not come out and said anything about Manage My Health. He's been absent. He's just left New Zealand to its own devices. All those people up north can just basically go fish because Luxon doesn't care. He's reciting his speech, trying to kind of come up with some kind of coherent statement. There's speculation rife that there's been a big barbecue at Bishop's Place and that there's a resignation announcement imminent, that Luxon could go, that the National Party is sick and tired of his lack of leadership and that everything's falling apart at the seams. But of course, that's just speculation, so I wouldn't put much faith in that. It's just kind of a rumour. But you know, there it is. And of course, Luxon hasn't been seen. He has been probably noted down at Onitangi Beach goofing off at the moment while all these things are happening. And we had all of those events with the fire in Pakuranga the other day where Luxon didn't care either if people were, you know, going to continue to be put at risk and their lives at risk. So this leader has really got to go. But probably worse is Winston Peters, the silence of Winston Peters and the inconsistency of Winston Peters. He's going to want New Zealand first, kind of like a Trump wants the Don Rowe doctrine to come into place, where it's America first and to hell with the rules-based order and the umbrella of military protection and security for all other countries. So we're on our own, basically. So how's Luxon going to manage to tell us that with our Jude the Ripper in charge of defence, a woman who actually lost a satellite as Minister of Space in 2025, is actually someone we should trust to actually suddenly build up a great big army, pour a whole lot of money into defence that we don't have, borrow like crazy, like we did for tax cuts, that we didn't really need to make at the worst time in the economic cycle. So again, the bungling and incompetence and the kind of direction that we're going in is not the right direction, and all the polls say so. So if you're thinking of voting for somebody, you should be voting for change in New Zealand, because that's the big current, that's the bandwagon. Get on the bandwagon, get rid of this government. Luxon may go by himself shortly. There could be a resignation. Later today, we are expecting to hear from some kind of polling results. If it's not today, it'll be in the next few days. The discredited Courier polling company that is commissioned by the Atlas Network think tank, the Taxpayers Union, will come out with a poll pretty soon, and there'll be much made of that. But as you know, one poll is just a poll. And in the trend overall, Labor's out in the high 30s, National's teetering on 29%. And so we will see what we will see when it comes to polling. There's not been much that's actually been in favour of the National Party to make them grow or come back in the polls. The Indian FTA got a very, very negative reaction all across the country. Nobody really thought that was too good. Maybe a few people that grow, kiwi fruit, maybe people who were exporting beef thought that was a good idea, or apples. But overall, there wasn't much of a big celebration around New Zealand over the Indian FTA, which I think was a rush deal and probably a low quality FTA, but it may have some good steps forward in it, as we must diversify our trade away from the whole way in which we had been doing business in the past in this new world order. We will see if Luxon's speech is actually going to include anything about how we are going to move with trade in the future. As you know, he spent a lot of time going to Southeast Asia, didn't actually come back with anything of tangible note. There was no new free trade details. There were no trade deals there done by Luxon. He didn't come back with anything tangible. It was all really just like a lot of expenses, a lot of jet fuel, a lot of emissions, a lot of time, having a lot of photo opportunities and grabbing people. But he didn't come back with anything tangible. So it's going to be up to Labour to go in there and to actually do the real business and maybe sign something up and get something done, instead of stuffing around with photo ops and just being a waste of time, basically. So those are the big stories of today. We've actually got this useless government that's invisible at the moment, that hasn't responded to the needs of the public, doesn't care about anybody, is detached, it's a bit wealthy and sorted. But the other news that is being talked about in the media is that the Golden Globe Awards have just got underway. And at the moment, there's a couple of interesting things happening. There's a film that's probably out in front at the moment that features Leonardo DiCaprio, and that's like one battle after another. And that's a Paul Thomas Anderson film that's tipped to be in front with 9 nominations. And when it comes to TV shows, White Lotus is out in front. So this is the kind of scene setter, I suppose, for the Academy Awards, and those people that are interested in these kind of things will probably be paying a lot of attention, and it might feature on TVNZ1 News tonight, probably will. So that's all from me today. We're just doing a quick update in the absence of Christopher Luxon and no strong statements from Winston Peters as the world basically falls apart and there's so much uncertainty that anything that Luxon puts in his speech at the moment has to be taken with just a grain of salt. Let's vote them out. Ditch the pricks in 26. See you later. Talk to you again soon.
Welcome to G News, the good news.
Yeah, right.